I'm going to get into actually mounting the upright rail onto the base plate. I've got all my hardware and all my tools here. All you're going to need is a Phillips screwdriver, and you're going to need the 5 1/4 20 bolts and washers. These are Phillips head bolts, very simple. Everything else I'm going to pull aside here. We'll go over that in great detail as we assemble it. Now, I've lowered the camera head down on my rail because the lower the center of gravity, the easier it is to handle. You may also want to enlist the help of a friend to help hold this because you don't want it falling over while you're trying to attach it to the base plate. I have my base plate on a rotary table here for demonstration purposes. You'll place yours on a flat surface, a solid surface. You just want to overhang the base plate enough to where you can get up underneath it and put in the bolts. They go from the underneath side up through the base plate and into the threads on the rail. So what I'm going to do, now remember all my wires are attached to this. So what I'm going to do is just carefully pick this up, put it in position over the bolt holes, sort of manage my wires, get them out of the way. I'm going to come in from the bottom with one of my bolts and my Phillips screwdriver. I'm going to put it up through the hole. There it is there. Now I'm going to find my spot. That's it. And now I'll put my other one in. Like so. I'll put the other screws in and then we'll come back and show you how to mount the rail head. All right, now that the rail is securely mounted to the base plate, very easy. I'm going to go through and show you how to mount the rest of the material on here. Part of what I've done here is I've given you a couple of magnets with levels on them. So these are going to come in later. Very important on how to get everything calibrated so that it's right. The first thing I'm going to do on my lift now is I'm going to put the handle on it. This handle, it's an aluminum handle. It has a flat in the hole and a flat on the shaft. You can only put it in one way. It's real easy. You find where the handle goes on. It just slides right on. You've got a little Phillips screw and a screwdriver. You simply put that in and screw it down. Give it a little snug and you're done. Now, before you start mounting anything else, you want to loosen these 4 screws. There's 2 on each side. These screws allow you to extend the head forward or retract it backwards. It's a lot easier for mounting to have your head extended a little bit. So what I like to do is I extend it about 3/4 of the way and I'll snug these down again. It gives me some room to get my hand behind this to mount things. Now, before I start mounting the camera, I want to explain briefly, this is a USB 3 cable that communicates with the camera. This cable is the motor cable for the electronic stacking rail. This cable goes into the flash sync of the camera. This goes into the battery compartment of the camera and supplies the camera with AC power. And this little beauty is an AC adapter for the wireless transmitter for the flash. This means you never have to use batteries. Never have to run out. You can, but batteries have to be replaced frequently, and that solves the problem. So the first thing I'm going to do now is I'm going to mount my electronic rail. Now this electronic rail has a quick release for the camera. It has 3 positions, 3 1/4 20 positions that we can use for mounting, and a cable that's going to connect to here. I picked the center because it's in the middle. There's no reason with this large copy stand to have to mount it anywhere else. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to step around this other side. Actually, I'll do it this way so you can see it. So here's the knob. It's captured, it can't come out of this. So I'm going to line it up to my center hole and thread it in. I'm going to put it about middle there. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to meter where my level is here, and then I can put this up here and I can adjust my level backwards or forwards until I get it right where I want it, and I tighten it down and I'm good to go. Now, that's all good for this way, but what about this way? This is a beautiful copy stand in the fact that this will allow me to set my camera normal to my base. You want your camera the same angle as your base. By adjusting this rear screw, and there's a wrench here, by turning this screw up or down, you can actually change the pitch of your camera to where it is exactly level. You lock it in place and you're done. You really only need to do this once when you're setting your system up. I'm going to preset it so that the camera is level on a level working space. So now that our rail head is mounted and it's nice and secure back here, I need to mount my camera. So mounting the camera is also fairly simple. It has a quick release mount on the back of it, locked into place. It's got the reciprocal plate here. You simply put the two tones here into the two grooves up here and press. That locks it into place. It's a quick release. To remove the camera, you pull the release back. Now the camera won't come off until you press the silver button, and that takes it to the second position, and then the camera will just slide right out. Again, to put it on, you put the two mating surfaces together and you squeeze it. When you hear that click, it's locked into place. It's rigid, it's in the same place every time. So before we go through the mounting of this, I want to show you a little something about the battery. The battery compartment, I'm going to use the Phillips screwdriver to show you here. The battery compartment has a little rubber door here. This door keeps dust and dirt out of it when you don't have a cord in it. But because we're using the electronic battery eliminator, our cord has to go through that opening. So be mindful that that flap is free and open when you put in this little block. Otherwise, it won't allow the door to close, and then your camera, if the door doesn't close all the way, the camera will not turn on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mount the camera. I'm going to come over here, I'm going to open up my battery compartment door so you can see it. And I'm going to slide in the AC adapter. Now, the cable went right through that little door on the bottom. I'm going to close this, and that's it. We're done. The other side of this camera has a few connections we're going to be dealing with. One is the USB 3.0 that's going to communicate up here. The other is the flash sync. This is not the flash sync, this is the shutter release. It's going to go right here. It can only go in one place. So we're going to press this in, and the cable's pointing down. We give it a little press, and that's it. I like to put this one in first because once the USB 3 cable's in there, it makes it very difficult to reach that. Canon has produced a strain relief for this USB 3 cable. That is because the USB ports on the camera are fairly delicate, and constantly moving these ports will break them. And so that's why this elaborate screw-on strain relief has been made. So you simply put the cable in, and then you press your strain relief into position, and you tighten the two screws. Make sure my cable's in there. Okay. And that secures the USB cable, and with all the other wiring here, it can't move anymore. So now the last thing we're going to do is we're going to connect the rail, and that has a fitting in it that can only go one way. So as you rotate the fitting, you'll find it finds home, and you lock it in position. It's got a keyway, so it can only go in one spot. And the final thing we're going to do to wire this up is the Interfit S1 remote control. Now this has, again, a battery eliminator in it. There's a yellow battery, which is what we call a hot dummy. It connects the positive and negative together. And this is the power that we're going to put into this. And it's marked positive and negative. This is marked positive and negative. So you put it in just like any old AAA battery. It has a very thin ribbon cable. So when you put the ribbon cable in, you just want to make sure that it's not in the way of the latch. You close it down, you slide it onto the hot shoe, and you lock it in position. Now, when you plug all this into the AC, this will be powered. You never have to replace batteries. That's it. Now, at this point, I would only want my camera extended this far if I was doing huge macro. It's much more stable closer back because you don't have as much of an overhang. So typically when I'm shooting smaller stuff, I do like to run my camera back a little closer to the main rail. Now, the last thing we're going to do are do some wire management. And this is pretty simple. I'm going to raise this up actually to get it out of the way so you can see it. This is also counterbalanced, so it takes very little to move this up or down. I can do this with a single finger. So I'm going to lock this in position so it doesn't take off on me somewhere. You basically have two sets of cables. You have the power cable on this side and you have your communication cables on this side. So what I've done is I've supplied you with a wrench. This is a ball end hex wrench. These are stainless steel bolts that screw in with stainless steel and rubber clamps. So you need to take the bolt out of the clamp, spread the clamp. And what I've done is on both of your cables, there are two wire ties that have flags sticking out of them. You want to put the clamp between them and then mount it on the base plate. What this does is it puts your wire in the right spot so that you have all the length that you need without any extra. So I'm going to take and push that down into the threaded port, and I will screw it home. And I'm going to do the same thing to the other side. And then my wires are managed. And I can actually set this up like so, so they're actually pointing out the back. Now come around this one and do the same thing with this. Again, once you do this, you're done. You don't have to do it again. This is the initial setup. Now take this out of my clamp. There are my two flags right here. I'll leave my wires out that way. I'll put my clamp this way. It kind of mates with the other one. Put my bolt through. And I'll screw it on home. Get it snug. And that's it. At this point, my rail is done. Everything is set up and ready to go. Now the next thing I'm going to do is set this thing up and show you how to hook this all up to the computer later. But right now, that's the big part. That's getting your rail assembled. You're done. All right, now that the lift is assembled and we have our wires routed properly, the final thing we need to do is connect everything. And that's a pretty simple process. I had mentioned before you have two sets of wires coming off of this. Now you've got basically power and communication. The first thing we're going to do is let's hook up the communication cables first. These are going to go to the rail controller. You have two wires here, one that says trigger, or two ports, one that says trigger and one that says rail. This is the flash trigger, and this is the rail. This is the motor cable that controls the rail. So you put it in there and you twist and lock the cable. Now that's in, you're set. The other communication cable is the USB 3 from the camera. This is a 5 meter long USB 3 cable. This is specifically designed for long distance so that you can have your computer far away and still connect to it and have reliable communication to the camera. In your manual, there will be a page that shows you where all the wires connect to the back of the computer, which port this is being used on for this system. It can be used in virtually any USB 3 port, but I will show you the port that's actually being used. The next thing we need to do is connect the power. Now there's a couple of things here. One of them, this is the power that will provide 3 volts to our wireless flash sync on top, and that simply will plug into this plug strip. This plug strip is a universal plug strip that is designed for 110 and 240 volts. It will have a G4 Malaysian plug going into your wall. It has an on-off switch here, and it's also got the ability to charge 5 volts USB charging system here. So I'm going to turn this off for now while we're plugging things in. The first thing I'll do is I will, I want to note too, this is a variable voltage charger. Keep it on 4.5 volts at all times. Do not change this because it won't charge, it won't work on that unless you have it at 4.5 volts. So we plug this in, very simple. For the Canon camera, there is this, it's an ACE6 power brick. This is the transformer for the Canon camera. The blue shielded cable that goes to your camera's little power supply plugs into this, and this simply plugs into the power brick. Now the camera has power. Lastly, this is the power for the StackShot controller here. This gets plugged in. Turn my power switch off. I'm going to plug it into my controller. Now we're good. Lastly, on the communication, I didn't cover this. This is a USB 2 cable. This plugs into the side of the StackShot here, the controller. There we go. And this will go into the computer as well. Again, I'll show you how that is connected. Once this is set up, you can place it anywhere that's convenient on the table. I typically tuck it back out of my way and it's fine. If you want to put it behind the system, depending on how you're set up, you're welcome to do that too. You get your wires up and out of the way and neat and tidy, and that's basically it. When you're all said and done, you turn this power on. Now, everything gets power, the camera, the controller, and you're all set to go. That's it. That's all there is to wiring this thing up.